and welcome to the first edition of Civic Affairs, hosted by Alex and Andy. Now we got a star-studded lineup for you today. We got 4 guests, but starting off, leading off batting, we got Sandy Holmberg from the NOP party. How you doing today?
Great, thanks for having me. I've become a staple here.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So now getting into it a little bit, let's see what we got here. We got a meeting. Okay, so now that you're running for, not council, but you're running for MPP, is it? I believe?
Yeah,
right. What kind of ideas are you going to be bringing to the table to kind of help on a municipal level here in Sault Ste. Marie?
Well, that's the beauty of the Northern Ontario Party, is that we're mandated to poll our constituents before any voting takes place or any bills in legislature. So we are not dictated by a party leader per se. So the mindset as a whole is benefit of Northern Ontario, and now as we know, Sault Ste. Marie is really a core there. So it's really important that Sault Ste. Marie gets behind us there.
So I guess that would give you a little bit more free range on maybe your own ideas being implemented a little bit easier, as opposed to having to go through the leader per se, correct?
Yeah, exactly, and that's that's where we're at. So they can vote, for me. Hopefully that intrigues voters to get out there and vote, because around 50% of people approximately aren't showing up to the polls. So that's really who we're trying to cater to. So hopefully we're giving them options that they didn't have before.
Right, absolutely. Andy, anything to add?
Yeah, Sandy, we wanted to get your opinion about, all your Northern Ontario Party people feeling the frustration that in Northern Ontario, the municipal, provincial, and federal levels, we need to do something different. Is that what you're hearing from other people in the North as well? That what we've done in the last 50 or 60 years just isn't working in Northern Ontario?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's too bad when the whole hush is of frustration or anger in a certain spot, right? So, but I think it's felt throughout the North, and we are just not getting first crack at anything as far as decisions being made in the GTA, right? So we have needs that are specific to us. We realize that, and so we really want to bend the ear of people, in the legislature higher up, remind them that we're here, and we could be one of the most prosperous places in Canada.
Right.
We're sitting on, billions of dollars in resources.
And do you think that being called the Northern Ontario Party would kind of damper the Southern Ontario's look on you guys? Maybe you're not going to be able to get as many votes in that category per se?
Well, we have 10 candidates in the ridings up here, so virtually nothing to do but with them down south. But that's entirely the point. So you have Northerners speaking from a Northern perspective, people from here just bringing those voices, carrying them, articulating them down south to the people down south. Because maybe some of them are under the impression that we are fine on our own, and we don't have those needs that need to be met, and the funding needs to trickle up here a little bit more. So
couldn't agree more.
What are some of the ideas that you're hearing at the door that people feel that municipally can do, people need to do? What's missing in Northern Ontario other than the funding?
Yeah, lots of, and I mean that would be the core versus the semi-periphery and the periphery, but at the core of it, lots of things I'm hearing are it's hard to A, find a job, and B, keep a job. So why is that, right? And we have lots of social services available to us, and they're being, they're warranted more and more and more. People are accessing them more, and we're not really asking why that is. So it's really important for people here to have job security, whether that's in the job that they're already in, whether they're working at Algoma Steel, right? They're in a union, they should be protected. And, raise a family without the fear that, you could lose your job at any minute. So we really want to push for, job creation. We have a plethora of entrepreneurs in the Soo and surrounding areas. So it's a really nice melting pot where we can even, turn that into a really nice tourism spot.
And what would be some of the first steps that would be taken to try to open up more jobs, get that job creation? Because even with places like Algoma Steel, these new tariffs put in place, unfortunately, can't go anywhere without hearing that. That kind of puts a damper on their job security, even themselves. So when it comes to job creation, what's it going to take to kind of open that door to making those jobs?
Well, we really have in our platform, actually, and I invite people to go to the northernontarioparty.org, which is our website. And our platform is, it's basic, you know, anybody can understand it. We don't have gargantuan numbers, astronomical numbers there. We are just pushing for manufacturing, right? So we support the Ring of Fire, things of that nature, and I think that would really help with job creation there too. And also, like I said, the small businesses, right? So you have to take a look at, you know, what's hurting them. So of course, you know, putting up the minimum wage is a wonderful theory for the people there. You know, you can't blindside, you know, business owners with it either. So you got to find a happy medium there so that they can keep progressing in their businesses and hire people, more people, and keep them on without that fear. So that's something that that we need to tread lightly with, and if the government wants to keep imposing this without it going up at the rate of inflation, then maybe we can look at better tax deductions come tax time, tax exemptions, things of that nature. So, and also funding, you know, 50% in kind, this or that, or what have you. So better access to funding for small business owners, just give them a little edge.
Right, that's what I've heard. The funding just hasn't been there.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any thought given to, after the provincial election, to have some of the candidates for the Northern Ontario Party run for council and get the message across so, you know, 4 years from now, they can have more of an impact, have that impact at the local level for ideas for Northern Ontario?
And I think that's a great idea because, you know, our leader has compiled us for people that are working people, because the voters, you know, they don't want to have to rely on the same old thing every time, right? So we are, you know, blue collar people, worker people, we're farmers, we're truck drivers, we work in mills. So our issues are your issues, right? So if we can't get any seats per se, and you know, that's the hope. But really in our inaugural year, it's about bending ears and being the squeaky wheel, right? So that would be a wonderful idea, and you know, at 10 out of 13 ridings, and we have 2 new ridings up north near James Bay, and they're all very passionate in their own right, and they all have, you know, various issues that they're dealing with, and that's absolutely something I would look forward to. I reside in McDonald, Meredith, and Aberdeen Township, so I think that might be something to look into in the future.
And you could recruit somebody from Sault Ste. Marie to possibly put their name in here locally, and I just think that's more of an impact. And then 4 years from now, and then 8 years from now, you'll have different results as a party.
Yeah, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon for us, right? Even though it feels like it, you know, to us, and, you know, we just started, I just, you know, got my candidacy papers in, you know, 3 weeks ago, and it's been a whirlwind. It's been eye-opening, and I hope that, you know, after this, we've at least gotten a little bit of a following. And we're open to suggestions from anybody, because that's the difference between us. We don't go and say, this is our platform, read it, and we're done now. We kind of preface what our conversations are with people with, what is it you want in our platform? So hopefully the dichotomy is seen there by people. So.
And you even saying this is your inaugural year, what's kind of been the perception, another option for these voters to vote for, especially if they have that personability that they can relate, hey, these people are from the north, I have the same problems they do. So what's been the perception like? Well,
that's the hope, right? And I mean, that's why we're running, and we're on board with that. Mm. And some people, you know, it's the opposite. There's mixed reviews, right? And what's the point if you're not going to get you're never going to get a majority government. Okay, so the Green Party's been at it for 30 years, so it's an uphill climb, and you know, we're the underdogs, but you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained as well. Yeah. So it's tough, but no, people have been really perceptive, and like I said, you know, if they're fueled by frustration, that's okay too, because the hope is to turn it around eventually to hopes of prosperity. So.
Great. Well, that's the idea. Municipally, good things can happen, and if you work at it for the next 4 years,
Yeah.
that could springboard to other things.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're going to segue into, you know, the new council, things of that nature, you know, there's just a wealth of knowledge and ideas and innovation that the Soo is privy to. So it's exciting, despite any, you know, issues that we may be facing.
Right. Sandy, I have to thank you so much for coming in, but we have to keep on moving with the guests. Like I say, thank you so much. And Andy, who is it that we're having coming in next?
Lisa Vezeau-Allen, she's a candidate for Ward 2.
Oh, okay. Well, stay
Thanks,
tuned.
Sandy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, stay tuned so we can hear more after this. And as promised, Lisa Vezeau joins us here in studio. She's running for Councillor of Ward 2, and I got my man Andy here with a hot question.
All right. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good, Andy.
It's been
How
a
are you?
long time. Nice to see you
It's been a long
back.
time, yes.
I just wanted to have you back here on our first show of Civic Affairs, and maybe you can let the viewers know a bit of your background, what you've been doing in the last little bit.
Certainly. Well, I grew up in Ward 2. I raised my family on Forest Avenue, and we did leave. We left December 2014, and we had an opportunity in Boulder, Colorado. So I've been in Boulder, Colorado for the past 3 years and a bit. We moved back mid-February, and we're super excited to be back. It's great to be back in the Soo. It's great to have the kids sort of back with their old group of friends and closer to family, and also, you know, we really appreciate the quality of life here and the lifestyle and the outdoors, and so it's good to be back, and it's also great to have this opportunity to run in Ward 2. So I'm super excited, and sort of what brought it on was when Christian Provenzano filed his papers. I was like, oh, you could already file papers. I'm like, okay. So I just did it. So, you know, without consultation, I just told my husband, I'm like, by the way, I'm running for Ward 2.
Yes, you can. May, June, July. It's a 3-month window.
Yeah. So I thought, let's just get the ball rolling and get it started.
And what kind of matters light that fire underneath you to actually want to run? Because I mean, it's got to take some tireless hours to go and run for it.
Yeah, I'm very community minded. I've always contributed to community. I started actually volunteering in community theater. I was on stage from the age of 13. I joined my first board of directors at age 18. So I've consecutively sat on a board of directors for over 35 years, which is, you know, I think I need to get like some sort of gold watch or something. I'm only 30, but and that's always been really important to me. I think, you know, a community is only as healthy as the people that can contribute to that. I have a great track record as far as fund development and grant writing and understanding how all the pieces connect. So I was just talking to some of the counterparts that are coming on later. I had done as past executive director of the Sioux Youth Association, a collaborative gardening project at the art gallery. So it was taking a look at, you know, what are the needs of my community that I'm serving. And at that time at Sioux Youth, it was youth, you know, access to healthy food, understanding what healthy food was. And it started with a collaboration with the Art Gallery of Algoma, Pauline's Place, and we got some startup money from Club Calabrese. Okay. At the time, I had an application into the Healthy Communities Fund, and we got full funding. We got over $26,000. And from that was, you know, private enterprise. It was a private chef that was helping. It was, you know, a private Pilates instructor that was going to teach health and wellness. So I have that ability to kind of take a look at situations and connect the pieces that need to be together. And I think with any community to thrive, you need those relationships with private enterprise. You need those relationships with service organizations. You need that with nonprofits. You need that with, I also owned a private business. I know the struggles of small business ownership and what that entails. So you need everyone at the table working together, and you never really know what you can achieve with that. You know, there's, you know, who would have thought that, you know, why would the art gallery want a farm or a little garden to grow food? Well, they have the space. And also you want more people going to the art gallery. So if people are coming to the art gallery to work on the garden, then maybe they'll go into the gallery, and then maybe they'll become members of the gallery, or maybe they'll discover art. So, you know, it's really kind of taking a look at what can you do to help each other.
Right, to open that door to kind of keep the ball rolling.
Open the door and just, you know, not kind of think, oh, we are this organization, so we can't do that.
Okay.
You know, it's not the way I think the world works anymore. We're a global market. So
Right.
even though I'm living here in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, I'm the director of fund development for the YMCA of Boulder Valley in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
So I assist an $13 million four-facility organization with all of their grants. Well, all I need is an internet connection.
Right.
So, you know,
That's
and
right.
taking a look at how do we build a healthy community, it's also taking a glance at what is available out there and how can we bring in a really solid knowledge-based economy. So even though my employer is in Boulder, Colorado, I own a home here, I buy my groceries here, I go out to restaurants here, I buy my kids clothes here, you know what I mean? So it's,
Right.
I'm able to contribute to the health and well-being of this community economically, even though I'm not employed here. So, you know, it's taking a look at how can we kind of alter that mindset of, you know, you need to be here and work here to live here. Like you can have writers, you know,
Oh, absolutely.
computer scientists, coders, testers, data scientists, you know, you
The
can.
list goes on and on.
It goes, you know, like whoever does something that, web developers. So it's not just that, there's other pieces to that puzzle, obviously, but it's really giving an innovative approach to some of the issues that I still see in Sault Ste. Marie. And I continue to support the Soo with fund development, even though I left, and I helped AFS get the funding for the first walk-in clinic on Queen. They contracted me as a grant writer. So I've always kept on the ball with what was going on locally here. And I've been back and forth a lot, and I understand the stats. And there is definitely that issue that a lot of the statistics have stayed the same. So then how do we then ask that question, why? So rather than be reactive, I think it's important to take a really holistic approach and kind of pinpoint what is it that we're still doing the same, what can we do differently, and what really are those critical issues to create a healthy community. And that's really my passion for Ward 2, and I think a strong downtown is critical
Key.
to any community. You know, I was in Escanaba, Michigan this past weekend for baseball. My youngest is in competitive ball, and it's, you know, I went to their downtown. So downtowns to me have always been an interest, and Ward 2 is very diverse. So, you know, what the people need on James Street is very different than what an organization like the YMCA might need, is very different to what the Bush Plane needs, is different to, you know, myself included, if you're living on a street that has old infrastructure. I mean, I lived on Forest Avenue and endured like having no street and everything dug up. So, you know, we all have different needs and wants, and it's really not trying to solve every piece, but it's taking a look at where are the priorities, what do they need, how can we help, you know, a woman who's living at the Lions building that we know elderly right now are combating loneliness. We know this from studies that are happening. A lot of studies are being done in the UK. So if we have seniors that are lonely, then how do we solve that problem with maybe, oh, the Bush Plane needs volunteers.
Okay.
So it's really taking those innovative approaches of, if you have a social problem, how then do you help other institutions within your city to benefit? Because I think we all, to be healthy, we all want to contribute. Everyone wants to contribute in whatever capacity they can. So it's really, I think, in serving, you know, both the ward, the city, the community at large, how do we create those opportunities for people so that we all equally contribute and have that equitable community that we all want to thrive in?
Time for one more quick question.
Sure.
I would think, let's fast forward the clock to the October 22nd. How do you see yourself, if you get elected in Ward 2 as a councillor, to moving the mayor and council into a different direction that you're not seeing right now?
I wouldn't necessarily, I'm not going to steamroll and come on. I've never sat on city council before. While I have had a lot of dealings with city council, I've done a lot of presentations to city council, I've asked for funding from city council, and I certainly understand the framework and what goes on. I'm certainly not going to say, hey, like,
Right, because you're only one vote.
I mean, but you also have to, I think what I bring to the table is that capability of creating partnerships and understanding funders and what funders want. So, I mean, to do a tally, probably in this community, in both private sector and public sector, I've brought in well over $500,000 in grants. So I understand that funding cycle. I understand what funders want. I understand unique funding opportunities. And it's really, like today I was at the Downtown Association's presentation from the consultant they brought in, and he said, low-lying fruit for some improvements, $30,000. I initially said to Josh Ingram, let's take a look at your list, and then let's find some funding for that list. And that's really has been my, my gift, I guess. I was an English major. I went back to school in my 30s and got my not-for-profit management degree. And, what was always my voluntary career, I did a lot of oncology and palliative care, service work in Windsor, Ontario, where I used to live as well, then turned into my career. So grants and funding and dealing with donors has always been my expertise and my strength. And it's really bringing that back to here is what I would like to see, because I know that there's, I want that funding pool to come here.
Private sector donations,
it's sort of a mix, right? So, right now I work for a $13 million organization. Right now in grants, I've brought in about $650,000 so far this year. Private donors, those, I had 2 come in last year at over $50,000 each. But you can't count on those. Those come in cycles, but it's really getting that solid base from, governmental funds, non-governmental funds, and private foundations. And that is where you can find sort of those unique sources that can help us with some of our wish lists in this community. And that's what I really want to bring to the table is, let's take a look at where the gaps are in our community. Let's set some priorities, and then let's find some potential alternative funding for those, not just taxpayers.
Lisa, we do need
Thank you.
alternative funding.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, we're not quite done yet. I'm hearing from the producers in the back room here that we still got a bit more time.
Go ahead.
Well, you were saying you used to own a small business, and I know this is a little bit off and astray, but with that minimum wage jumping up so much, if you owned a business at this time, how much of a deficit or how much of a struggle would that be to try to cope with? You
know what, it is a struggle, and I understand both sides. As someone who's worked with people trying to have a living wage and as a small business owner, so I can certainly tell you that as a small business owner, my employees probably made more money than I did, quite honestly. Wow. And that is the reality of it, right? So, where do you find that balance? As a small business owner, I could see now maybe where I could have changed some things. So really, when you're owning a small business, the key is to pay yourself first. And that might mean, working 60, 70 hours a week. So owning a small business, you have to be very impassioned and dedicated to that business. And I certainly understand the struggles of that. Can we be more innovative in our small businesses? There's always those internships and summer jobs, grants that, you can get 50% funding, or, you do like, students that have co-op. So it's how do we help grow and build? Because small business is key to a community, and I'm a huge supporter of small business. And I consult with small businesses, and I have friends that own small businesses here in town. And yeah, I understand their struggles, and I understand both sides. And I think that's the other key piece is, understanding both sides of that equation, and where do we find, a solution. I think it's a bunch of different pieces, right? It's do we have better supports where we can give training so that small business owners can learn how to do their own bookkeeping, so then maybe they don't have to hire a bookkeeper. Like, where is that, right? Like, so if you do a survey of small business owners, where do you think you could save some money? Where do you need assistance? And maybe create a training module from that. So
Kind of taking that step back to look at the whole scheme.
yeah, like you can't just say, hey, like if I didn't have to pay $15 an hour, I'd be making a lot of money. It's taking a look at, you know, what is my ultimate product that I'm selling as a small business? What am I missing? Who am I missing? How do I, you know, target the market differently? What maybe do I need to maybe have some cost savings, so then maybe I'm actually making a better livelihood. So it's not just a simple like, oh yeah, if I only had to pay $12 an hour, I'd be making money.
Right.
Maybe you wouldn't be either.
It's
so
learning how to cope.
It's learning how to cope and understanding where your gaps are and where you need to have those approaches as to taking a look at your business in a very honest manner. It's the same today when I sat, you know, in the presentation by the consultant. You know, you don't necessarily want to hear about negative things about our city, but the one takeaway was our amazing waterfront, which we could do so much with, and as well, just the people, how wonderful the people are and how friendly the people are, and you know, that's why I'm back. It was so interesting. A few days ago, I have an aunt in the Davie home, and so I understand the struggles of seniors. And this lady was just like, can you give me a ride home? I'm here visiting my 100-year-old mom. She's like, you look familiar. And I'm like, sure, I can give you a ride. And I mean, in any town, I wouldn't approach a stranger and ask them for a ride.
Oh, no,
Do that
absolutely.
in Toronto.
Oh, you wouldn't do it in Boulder either. So, you know, and I was like, and then I was talking to my cousin, it's her mom that's in. I said, you know, I drove this really sweet lady home, and I told her her name, and she's like, I've driven her home too. And I said, well, maybe it's just we have like the safe, honest face. But, you know, this lady takes the bus and things like that. So it was like, sure, I can give you a ride because she'd missed the bus. So, you know, we live in that kind of community, you know, where, you know, I'm at the Davie home visiting my aunt. She's at the Davie home visiting her mom. She misses the bus, but, you know, has faith in her fellow, you know, citizen to safely give her a ride home. So, you know, that was like just sort of, I took that away like, oh, I'm really glad to be back. Like
It must really say something about the people in this city.
It does, especially for a consultant to come in who's been doing this for multiple years and has been to numerous communities. Said, you know, the people here are so friendly. So I think that's something we need to take pride in. And then how do we harness that gift, right?
Okay.
How do we, you know, how do we take that human capital of kindness and make it into something that we all want to see in our community? How do we really
All want to be a part of that,
Yeah.
that sense of community, like you're even saying there.
So how do we tell those stories, and how do we really, you know, there was a friend of mine, this was a few years ago, and he's an advocate, and he did Selfies for Change. So how do we harness those sort of little initiatives? Because to create change, you don't need something grandiose, and you don't need some investor to come in and give you like $10 million to, you know,
To
build
start
a
a
water
farm.
park or whatever. It's change happens through small acts of kindness. And that's really where you'll find pure, authentic change, is in the kindness of the people that you surround yourself with. And also, how do you take that kindness in our community and make it, you know, such an asset? How do we, you know, build on that and grow that? And I think that's, you know, us really sharing those stories, because we don't do that well. And it's not just here, we don't like, as Canadians too, right? We don't say, hey, like, we're so great, but we're so polite about it. But no, we are, like, we're a great country. And as someone who's lived in the US for the past 3 years, you know, my colleagues would be like, why the heck did you leave Canada? Like, are you crazy? It's sort of like, no, this is like a new opportunity and a new experience for my family. And I think that's important too, is, you know, we always say, oh, people leave. Well, this is my 4th time coming back. So I bring with me, you know, the wealth of experience from all the different communities and countries that I've lived in. And I think that is something that I really want to bring to our community again.
Right.
As well. And I bought a house, so I'm staying.
Speaking of which,
Good.
did you see or learn anything in Boulder, Colorado that you could bring here in terms of what they're doing in Colorado?
Yeah, most definitely, especially with my continued work with the YMCA of Boulder Valley. And I'm actually meeting with Kim Caruso tomorrow at the YMCA here, because I think once you drink the Y Kool-Aid, it kind of stays with you. And I've done some work on innovation at YUSA in Chicago. I was a recipient of a $15,000 grant. So, you know, in doing that, it's kind of taking a look, okay, this is what works at our Y, and what we're doing.
Right.
So let's see what we can do at the Y here. And I'm happy to share. And that's the whole thing too, is we don't own ideas, and there's not a lot of original ideas, but how do we take something that someone else is doing? So the one thing, because obviously disabilities has a soft spot in my heart. I was almost 7 years on the board of Children's Rehabilitation Center Algoma, which is now Thrive. And we're developing at RY in Boulder a peer-to-peer network. So that kids with disabilities can fully engage without like a worker being there, an adult, but a peer.
For a kid to be a kid.
Yeah, and my son really benefited from it. I have a 15-year-old on the autism spectrum, really benefited from that in the school district that we were in because they had peer tutors. So it's part of an international model called Best Buddies. So it's really, how do we take what we're trying to grow and build in Boulder, and does it speak to the Y community here, and how can I help? And that's really about all of us. I mean, we all in our travels and our experiences bring back a little bit of something. So it's how do we harness all of this amazing talent that we have here and give people that voice or that vehicle
Absolutely.
to create change.
Right. Now, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
for having me.
This was a great second guest, if I had to say so, Andy.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
We'll be right back
Thank you.
with
Lisa.
Josh Ingram, I believe, correct?
Yes, sir.
Josh Ingram next from the
Great
Downtown
segue.
Association. See you in a bit. And welcome back to Civic Affairs with Andy and Alex. Alex and Andy, which one sounds better?
I can rotate it around.
You know what? Oh, okay. Andy and Alex will go. And we can't forget Josh Ingram. Thank you so much. He's from the Downtown Association. Whoop, I lost my mic. Hopefully my director's not saying anything too important right now. And Josh, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me, gents. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So now there was that meeting downtown today,
Yep.
kind of talking about what we can do to improve the downtown area, and I know you brought a lot of ideas to the table. What would you say is probably the number one thing that we got to do to really spruce up that downtown area?
Sounds like from the consultant's words, and we definitely agree with it. There's kind of a three-prong approach, so I can't give you one, I'll give you three.
Okay.
Wayfinding to and from and in and around downtown is one. Beautification. Plants, flowers, flower boxes, things along those lines, benches. And then the third one is probably some bracket signs, so they're not running horizontal on the street, they're running vertical, so you can kind of see it while you're driving down Queen Street. So those were three suggestions that we think are great, and something that our beautification committee's been working on as well. It was really cool to see like a tight alignment between our new strategic plan and what the consultant had to say.
For sure.
Great. The follow-up to that, of course, was the negative, too. You heard negative as well from the consultant. It's always not the easiest to hear. What was some of the things that he said that we really need to do differently?
Well, I mean, those are those things. When he was pointing those out, is the fact that we don't have any of that at all. He put up some slides in regards to driving from the bridge, say, to downtown, or driving to the museum, and the fact that a lot of our signage is confusing and kind of inundates your eye, and it's very difficult to find. But I got to tell you, in regards to it being difficult, if we had hired a consultant to come to Sault Ste. Marie and get up on a stage and for 3 hours tell us we were doing a great job, absolute waste of money. We were hoping that he'd come, and he'd knock a few home runs and kind of spin our heads a little bit and tell us from an outsider looking in, listen, this is what we got to work on. So.
Just as a quick follow-up, were the one-way streets, the downtown streets, mentioned at all by the consultant?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fair to say this is something that's on the Downtown Association's mind, the City of Sault Ste. Marie's mind. There's another consultant working on a report in regards to one-way, two-way conversion. Roger from Roger Brooks International, he said it's like the first thing we need to do. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do, but in his opinion, it would be absolutely the top of the list.
Well, I mean, even for example, like I've been born and raised here, and I can't tell you the amount of times where I've went one way to go down the street just to realize not far enough, back, up, down again, back with those one-way streets, right?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's something we definitely need to take into account for. You can't get off the bridge and go right to our downtown shopping center.
Also,
it's not a possibility.
Quick question that comes to mind. I know at the Downtown Association, we're talking retail, we're talking Station Mall. Are you concerned about what you're seeing in retail, the fact that you've got stores closing and that, and how does the Downtown Association have a plan to stop that trend?
Sure. I mean, the Downtown Association boundaries are just on Queen Street from Pym to Dennis, but of course we want kind of our neighbors and our stakeholders around us to be prosperous. The big thing is when you look at how economies are being driven right now, it's really kind of experience-based or tourist-based businesses that are surviving. So for an example, like I can get a coffee machine off Amazon, I can order 5 pounds of beans, I can make an espresso in my house, right? But you can't have that experience like going down to like, my wife went down to Shabby Motley in the winter when the new season of Gilmore Girls came out and they did a screening. You can't buy those like custom textiles, get your latte and watch an episode of a television show with a friend like at a viewing party if you just do that on Amazon, right? It's great to get like say the Blu-rays and get the coffee machines, but you're still doing it at home. So it's really those experiences that are really going to drive a modern economy, if you ask me. So that's kind of where we're leaning in regards to that. You know, Outspoken, these different businesses that have real experience, one of a kind. This is what you can do in Sault Ste. Marie downtown as opposed to just ordering online.
And in regards to the waterfront, what kind of things can we start doing to kind of spruce up that place, make it look more aesthetically pleasing, to get more traffic down there?
Yeah, you know what? That's the consultant brought up a lot of ideas there in regards to just as simple as going to the Roberta Bondar Pavilion and seeing a calendar, you know, or signage up there that says this is what's happening all summer long, you know, or opening up the idea of you know, different vendors or different buskers down there. So there are things we can do that, you know, they're tricky and there's some pieces that have to move, but those are a couple that came out of the report.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Roberta Bondar Pavilion is such a beautiful venue to have these kind of acts, and I couldn't agree more when you say to actually have something physically written out down there would be great to keep those people flowing down there and keeping everybody there.
Yeah, it'd just be nice to know if you're coming down for something, you know, June 20th, to know what's happening July 2nd. You know, it's a really simple thing, but just an outsider's eyes lends an opinion. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know what, like you said, born and raised. I was born and raised too. So there are pieces that we just don't think of because they've just become kind of like the background, right? So
right. Okay, I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Outside eyes for sure.
The Downtown Association, the goals, the mindset, how have you found it here since you've been here now for what, 4 months, 5 months maybe?
I've been here since 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, and but still transformative, especially over the last couple of months. You know, we might be thinking about since the AGM in February.
Right.
You know, really, really great. We wrote a strategic plan this year for the first time since the 80s, and I'm an 80s baby, so it's about as old as I am. But you know what? Really put in a lot of thought, a lot of interviews with, you know, stakeholders, Algomiu, Sioux College, NOHFC, the city, you know, our members. We really tried to cast a really wide net in regards to feedback. And then from there, we developed a critical path, identifying kind of our top 10 things that we really think would bring return on investment to our members, as well as bring the community down.
Some of those things
yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I'll say in regards to our community that I love the opportunity to plug is we have a lot more events happening this year. When I got on board on 2016, we had 3. This year we have like 11 to 13 planned already. The calendar is really full for the community. So we have 3 parties throughout the summer that are July 19th, August 9th, and whenever the Greyhound season opener is going to be. So we have some real tentpole events. We have Moonlight Magic in November, like always. And then in regards to our members, sorry, I'm a long talker.
No problem.
In regards to our members, this Roger Brooks International, who's come down, we host a webinar viewing at our offices the first Tuesday of every month now. The third Friday of every month we do a thing called DTA discussions, Downtown Association discussions. It's an opportunity for our members to get together in an informal fashion. They don't need to get on an agenda. They don't need any sort of written report, to meet with staff and talk about what's pertinent and what the issues are for them in the downtown. And I relay that back, or I try and make a plan for whatever those actionable items are. So we just finished ROI roundtables, return on investment roundtables, and out of those roundtables, for each sector, I've created like an infographic in regards to these are issues These are challenges, and at the very bottom is a recommendation for our boards to action for each sector. I can't tell you about those yet because they haven't made it to our boards. We just wrapped that
We'll
up.
have the exclusive here.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
absolutely, sure.
Now, what would you say are the ideas that are most prominently brought to these DTA Association meetings and whatnot?
Yeah, that's a good question. A few of them are, like something we're working on right now is trying to come up with a plan to align some of our members' hours more in an effort to be able to advertise maybe in a wider spread net. And also potentially action a service shuttle to some of these businesses once those hours are aligned. So that's a real quick example of like, this is an issue that's come up, and this is kind of how we're trying to tackle it with these 4 steps. So.
I'll maybe let our audience know how the Downtown Association ties in with the mayor and council municipally, because everybody may not know how the relationship is with the mayor and council.
Sure. Well, the Downtown Association is something called a business improvement area. Those are all across Ontario and Canada. There are 89 in Ontario. And I actually serve as a board of director of the Ontario Business Improvement Area Association as well. So we're right inside the Municipal Act. So our members are taxed an additional levy, and that's where our budget comes from, our operating budget. So that's kind of how we connect with council and with the city. We have a lot of projects that we do together. It should be, kind of mentioned that even this consultant who came up was a joint venture between the City of Sault Ste. Marie and the Downtown Association. They have identified downtown as a key strategic point in their own business operational plan. And with the future SSM project that wrapped up last year, they also identified downtown as like a pillar that they want to be working on. And I actually chair the city's community development roundtable on downtown. We're just staffing up our subcommittee right now. So there are a lot of pollination or cross-pollination between what the city wants to see and what the Downtown Association wants to see, to the point where I'd probably say that I think our relationship is probably stronger than it's been in a long time, and at the very least stronger than it was when I got on board, absolutely, bar none. And we also have, you get a really long answer, but I'll also say we're inside of our policy. It's mandated that we have a councillor as a representative on side of our board. So Councillor Grandinetti has been our councillor representative, and before that, Mr. Ross Romano was before that as well. So we have a councillor who sits on our board. So that's great to have that connective piece every time we meet, to be able to just kind of look across the table and say, what's the city initiatives with this? Like, has council had a conversation about this that you can tell us about yet? Things along those lines.
Have that insider information almost with the councillor on your side.
Absolutely, and like even on top of that, I mean, we have Angela Romano sits on our board, and she's with Ontario Tourism, and Rory Ring sits on our board, who's the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. So those kind of connective pieces are really important too, because sometimes my job would be like, okay, well, we'll meet next month, and in this month, Josh, make sure you meet with these key players about this issue. To have some of those people around the table just kind of look down the table with and say, what do you think about that, or how does the chamber think about that, is really, really helpful. We even have, we just added a liaison officer from the City of Sault Ste. Marie Police Force who sits on our board, so we can kind of bend his ear in regards to those kind of initiatives too. So there's my 10-cent answer. It only took 10 minutes.
Have you seen any pros and cons in the last 4 years? What's gone right and what's gone wrong on Queen Street? Why you must get frustrated some days to see why we're not moving faster on Queen Street for development as such.
Yeah, and I think we all do. I think it's fair to say, whether you're coming from the private sector or the public sector, I think that city staff or councillors get frustrated at times too. I think that the person walking down the street who would just really like a place open for brunch on Sunday gets frustrated, right? It's their community. They want to see it thrive. Right. They want to see it active. So yeah, there are times that we get frustrated, but we also have to understand to build something right, it also takes time. And I hate that that's that kind of the in the air kind of answer, but but I mean, it's also true. I will also say that in regards to the Downtown Association, there hadn't been a foundation in a long time.
Right.
And there was even a vote for a disbandment a few years ago, right before I came on board. So it was really obvious from the interim board as well as the new board that they elected that if we're going to do great things for our community and we're going to get people engaged in sponsoring or volunteering or actively being involved, that we really need our own foundation. So that's why the strategic plan was written, or the critical path was written. And I will say on top of that, we staffed up a full board. You know, we have a lot more buy-in. We're doing a lot more projects with the city, and even our subcommittees, who are 100% volunteer-based as well. I had no subcommittees when I started. I probably have a network of 30 people that sit on different subcommittees who are working towards a better downtown. So a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you don't see right away. I really think in the long run, with this consultant being here, in the next year or two worth of projects will really turn out to be something, you know, phenomenal. I have 2 daughters. That's why I do it. I want to see a vibrant community for them in 15 years. So that's why we do things like
These
this.
ideas take a while to get to fruition.
I'm being told it's time to wrap up. And like, just before we go though, you were saying you're getting frustrated, but the only reason why you're gonna get frustrated is because you care. You want things to work well, and that's exactly who we need on the Downtown Association. So Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
very
If
much,
you don't mind,
guys.
I'll snag a handshake too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I'll
we'll be
back.
I'll wear a red tie next time.
Oh yeah, so we can all match?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're cute like that. We planned it out beforehand.
Excellent.
So thanks so much, Josh, once again. And for our last guest, we'll have Frank Fata coming in right after the break. And we're back with our final guest of the day, but last but not least, definitely stands true here, with Alex and Andy. I'm taking the lead on this one this time.
All
Frank
right.
Fata, how you doing today?
It's a pleasure to see you guys.
Nah, it's a pleasure as well.
Thanks,
over
Frank.
here.
Last but not least.
Last but not least, exactly. Oh, okay. I see. I thought you were in.
Oh, yeah, okay,
sure.
great.
Well, hey, I mean,
Frank,
matter.
thanks for being here. You and I have got quite a history of broadcasting over the years.
Over the years, eh? Oh,
Just-
many elections.
I wanted to start by asking you the challenge that the mayor and council have with the tariffs and things that have been happening over in the United States. The mayor just returned from the Halifax, the mayor's conference, and has signed a co-letter with the mayor of Hamilton. How do you feel as a councillor that council should move with this situation being upon us?
Yeah, that's quite a situation that we have in our hands, and it happened like so fast, eh? But one thing for sure, the mayor's taking the lead on this, and I have to give him full congrats that he's done an excellent job, and he's certainly contacted the mayor of Hamilton. They're on board. He's even contacted the mayor of Sault, Michigan, because it affects everybody in this area. The Sault, Michigan population really relies on Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So it's a full team support that has to take place. The council obviously has to be there with the mayor, 100%. It has to be full support, and it's just we're in really chaotic waters here. I mean, right. It's really difficult to know what we should or should not do. But I mean, with the Prime Minister taking the lead, certainly our mayor, I think we're probably doing as about as good a job as we can do under the circumstances. So. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing more in the coming days because this is very it's also like going through a storm. You don't know what's around the corner. So let's just be positive. Let's hope that we can make it through this period. It's very uncomfortable, to say the least.
It will hurt us here in Sault Ste. Marie very quickly now that the tariffs are...
Algoma, in the last several months, they've been hiring a lot of young people. We need that continuation. Things are looking good now. If this situation with Algoma gets resolved, which we've been hoping for the last couple of years, this protection that it's currently under, and if we can deal with that, and then if we can weather the storm through this particular situation that we just got thrown at us, there's a lot of positives going on in Sault Ste. Marie in regards to Algoma. So, we have to be positive, but at the same time, we can't be too complacent.
Alex?
You got to cross your fingers in hopes that the best work out, but like you say, you can't be complacent. You got to keep working.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that every action that, like you said, the Prime Minister taken and us in the city has taken has been the right ones, or is there more that we could still do?
Well, there's some that have said to me that we're a little bit too, shall I say, laid back in terms of making a move, because on the American side they've initiated as of.
Yeah, they just did it
48 hours ago, and we're holding off for till the end of the month, till July 1st. So, is that a good thing? Well, I think we're trying to be reasonable here. I mean, it's sometimes, they say saner heads prevail. We're trying to be good neighbors. We're trying to deal with this in a way where it doesn't resolve. It's not going to be resolved by conflict, and by reacting like the way the Prime Minister did. I believe that was a good thing. Now we're going to go through a consultative period where we're going to try and see whether whether this can be resolved through good dialogue, and if that doesn't happen, we'll see.
Keeping on this important topic for one more question, if you were the Prime Minister with the G7 coming up this week, and the world leaders of France and Britain and Germany and so on, and Donald Trump making his first visit to Canada, would you try and change his mind on these tariffs during the G7 at the end of this week? Because we know Donald Trump is prone to changing his mind. Or would you, with the other world leaders, try to move them off of the tariffs?
We all know that we're dealing with Donald Trump.
Well, exactly.
I mean, he could have a nice brand of good Quebec whiskey, and suddenly he can change his mind. I mean, we don't know what anyone is capable of doing. Will the issue come up? I believe in some capacity it will, but it has to include some of his advisors, because some of the advisors, my understanding is that they are being very supportive. Whether Trump can be approached and actually talked to and get something resolved at this G7 meeting, that's a very, very difficult question to answer.
Do you think calling him out at the G7 summit, though, could potentially damage his ego, like in front of all these other country representatives?
I've seen what he does when he's put on the defensive. He can be very tenacious, and I don't think that's the way you resolve it with Donald Trump. You got to be extremely careful. I don't know. They'll take him aside. I think at some, Freeland or Trudeau or some. I mean, will maybe take him aside. And they may have a brief conversation, but with Donald Trump, you just don't know how he's going to react. I think we all know that, and whether anything can be done at this meeting, I hesitate to say yes, because I just don't know.
That's fair. And when you say he's going to Quebec for this meeting as well, do you what are you hoping for comes out of it? What is the best case scenario? That he just goes, okay, that was great, that was a great meeting, tariffs gone. I mean, I don't really think that's too realistic to think. So what's really the best outcome from this meeting?
I don't know if this is the only topic that they had planned. In fact,
but this might be the most important one.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, right?
And I think you've got, what you end up having is you have a G7 meeting, and they're all going to gang up on one, and I don't know if that's the way it's going to work. I mean, I think they're all doing it in their own way. I hope that something can come of it. With Donald Trump, you just don't know, because you don't know how he reacts, and to corner him, that's probably the worst thing you can do.
I would have to agree with you completely.
I really don't think that would be the way to solve it.
Let's move off of this for the remaining moments. One more question. The smart cities, Sault Ste. Marie wasn't successful. Does the mayor and council have a backup plan for where we go from here?
Well, we haven't actually discussed it, because we just found out in the last
week, next Monday.
Yeah, we're going to certainly be discussing that. But we've got good support at City Hall, as you know, with the Economic Development Corporation, with the Innovation Center. I think when we have expertise like we do with them, I think they're the ones that will certainly give us some direction. Certainly we can't fall back on our heels and say, well, because we've got to keep forging ahead. You certainly cannot just take it and whimper or whatever, but you have to be prepared to move on to the next project. And there's lots of things going on that we are going to try and be part of. Lots of good things that are happening, investment opportunities, infrastructure monies. So we have to be aggressive. At the same time, we certainly can't be complacent.
Right. Now, Councillor Fata, thank you so much for wrapping up. As you said, last but not least, I'll scoot over for another handshake.
Thank you very much.
And
It's great
for
having you.
Andy,
Appreciate it.
Alex, and Frank, and the rest of our guests that we had in today, thank you so much for tuning in to the first inaugural episode of Civic Affairs, and we'll be back next week with more.